Hi everyone, Adam here, and this is my most disappointing movies of 2024. I was only going to do 10, but I ended up getting more than 10. It's been a pretty disappointing year for movies. I was going to do a countdown, but look, this is just no particular order because I couldn't decide. So here we go. So this is most disappointing. I'm not saying all these movies were awful. I just found them disappointing. Okay, to me some were awful. But all right, here we go. We're starting off with, it pains me to put this on this list because I'm a fan of the franchise. It's Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. There's a lot wrong with it. The pacing was strange. It seemed to go really fast, and there was way too many characters. And plus a side story with Melody the Ghost and Phoebe. That didn't work for me. As you'd expect, good special effects, and it's always nice to see the original cast back. Their story probably should have finished with Afterlife and then moved on to the Spenglers, maybe, or maybe that's what they should do in the next one. I'm glad it made a profit, and we'll get more Ghostbuster stuff. But yeah, it wasn't. I think Afterlife was definitely the better movie. Okay, next up, Sting. This was a giant bug movie that takes itself way too seriously. What should have been fun turns into kind of like a family drama for a lot of it, which is not why you go to see a giant bug movie. Yeah. So yeah, it's basically the premise is kind of silly, but it takes itself way too seriously. All right, next up, The Watchers, and this is directed by Aishana Night Shyamalan. It's about a group of people. They get stuck in this kind of cabin where they're watched by creatures and they're not allowed to go out when the creatures are there, which is a basic premise. I just could not get into this. I know somebody else who really liked it, and that's fine. So like I said, this is just all my opinion. But yeah, I mean, the acting was pretty good though. I'll give it that. And they show a bit of Western Island in there, which was a nice touch. But this movie just didn't work for me at all. Okay, next up, The Exorcism. This is a movie about the Georgetown Project. For legal issues, they couldn't say what the movie they're making actually is. But this is with Russell Crowe playing an actor. His career is on the downslide, but as he's making a horror film, supernatural forces start to take over him. There's an interesting premise. Obviously, the movie's called The Georgetown Project, and obviously it's meant to be The Exorcist. There's an interesting premise, cursed movie production, which is something that's allegedly been happening in horror movies for years. But it didn't work for me. Very disappointing. I thought the Pope's Exorcist was more fun than this. This just didn't work for me either. Next up, Never Let Go. This is a film with Halle Berry. So this is a horror movie about when people leave their house, they have to be tethered via rope. And what happens apparently is if they don't stay tethered to the rope, they'll be attacked by creatures. Halle Berry does her best. She's trying to protect her two sons from the outside world. But it's one of those movies where you pretty much guess the ending pretty early on. You probably guess the ending by this description, but it was really boring with a twist that I think anybody who watches this will see coming. Yep. Next up, Borderlands. Of course, based on the video game. I'll give it credit. It does have the look of the video game, but everything's been watered down from the video game. This is the video game is violent, but it's done humorously violent sometimes. Casting was a bit strange, considering how different they are from the game. But, Cate Blanchett's a good actress. And they're clearly trying, but yeah, it's a shame because video game adaptations have been getting a lot better lately, but this is one it's kind of brought things down a bit, which is a shame because there is a decent cast in there. And it's surprising that Eli Roth, who's known for directing gory horror movies, does this, and everything's so watered down. And I know you say, you can't really compare it to the video game, but you go into any video game, movie, TV show, you're always going to compare it to the video game. And that's the thing, Borderlands had potential to be a funny, violent movie, and this was none of that. Next up, Hellboy the Crooked Man. This is another attempt to reboot Hellboy after the David Harbour one, which I might be the only person who didn't think that one was too bad. This one, I barely remember. We saw it a few weeks ago. Yeah, this one's set in the 1950s. Where he has to fight witches, a community of witches, and a demon. But it's very disappointing. The actor who's playing Hellboy, what was his name? Jack Casey. He's trying, he's doing his best, but it's always going to be hard when you're always going to be compared to Ron Perlman when you play Hellboy, unfortunately. But he does his best, but the movie's not very good. The acting's okay, but the special effects look kind of cheap. So, yeah, another attempt to reboot it, that didn't work. Next up, The Strangers Chapter 1. This is another reboot of a movie that's not really that old. Basically, if you've seen the original, it's kind of the same, but with a few slight differences, and obviously it's left with a cliffhanger ending. And it's interesting that they made a whole trilogy before, instead of just making one to see how it does at the box office. So I don't know what's going to happen to Chapter 2 and 3, maybe straight to streaming, because, yeah, it's not good. It seems like a kind of pointless, I guess, reboot / remake. And the characters do make some really stupid decisions in this as well. It just wasn't needed. And speaking of things that weren't needed, Joker Folie à Deux, or Joker 2. What an odd decision to make this kind of a musical. They should have just called it Joker Does Karaoke. Songs don't really have anything to do with the plot. Although I will say the acting is fine. Joaquin Phoenix does a good job, considering it's well directed, but the whole premise is really, why? In a way, the original Joker could have worked as just a standalone film, but or they could have done a decent sequel. A lot of this is just feel like there's a court case, which is just reiterating the plot of the first movie, with an ending that a lot of people didn't like. So, yeah. Up next, Madam Web. Another in the Sony Spider-Man universe without Spider-Man. To me, nothing in this movie worked. The characters aren't that interesting. Yeah, I mean, basically she has visions of the future and she has to protect some teenagers. Also in that, Sydney Sweeney plays a teenager. I think her character must have started school when she was 20. She doesn't look like a high schooler to me. But yeah, it didn't work. The way it's edited, the ADR of one of the actors is so obvious, and I think this is worse than Morbius. And I know some people like Morbius, but that didn't work for me either. And still in the Sony Spider-Man universe, without Spider-Man, and the most recent on my list is Kraven the Hunter. Another failed attempt at this franchise, and apparently it's the last one. I think Sony have given up. Just might as well give them back to Marvel, all these characters. The only ones that have worked really are when they work with Marvel and the Spider-Man movies and Into the Spider-Verse, really. I mean, when the best franchise in that is the Venom films, which I actually don't hate the Venom films, I don't mind them, but I know they're not great. But Aaron Taylor Johnson does his best, but he has not a lot to work with, and the villains are kind of meh, to be honest. Up next, tarot. This is someone who does a tarot reading who's not supposed to, and then bad things happen to the people that have read the cards. It's kind of like Final Destination, except with tarot cards, and with a whole bunch of unlikable characters. I guess nobody saw how bad this was going to be. I didn't. I mean, there's an interesting premise there. It could have worked, but it didn't. Yeah. That's all I've got to say about that. Next on the list is Imaginary. This tells a story of a woman who moves back to her childhood home, whose stepdaughter develops a friendship with a bear named Chansey. She starts playing games with it, and we don't know if this is in her imagination or if it's real. Or if Chansey is real, we don't know. There's an interesting premise there, but it didn't work for me. You can't really make teddy bears scary. Well, he's not a bear, he's a marsupial. And up next, Night Swim. This is about what's it called? Up next, Night Swim. This is about a demonic swimming pool. Yep. Which sounds silly and could have been made to be kind of fun, but it's not. This movie sunk. So Night Swim's about a demonic spirit in the pool in the new house they've just bought. There is some decent performances, especially from Wyatt Russell. His performance is good, but it's too bad he's stuck in this movie. Originally it was a short film, but then it got expanded to feature length. But it's another movie that takes itself way too seriously with such a silly premise. It's not good. I actually had more fun doing a review for it. If you've seen it, you know. But this one did sink. Okay, so that's my list of most disappointing movies of 2024. Let me know. Did you like any of these? Did you not like any of these? As I said before, just my opinion. Like I said, it's fine if you like these movies. Alright. like, comment, subscribe. I'm Adam, and I'll see you again soon.